Good evening, race fans, and welcome to tonight's coverage of the eNASCAR iRacing Road to Pro Series, live from north of the border at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park in Bowmanville, Ontario. I'm Justin Prince. Alongside the booth tonight are Blake McCandless, alongside Ricky Springer. Ryan Bauer, as always, is upstairs punching the buttons in the virtual production trailer powered by Top Flight Computers. Blake, I turn to you first real quickly. Tonight's expected to be a tough one as drivers across the grid are not just shopping for victories tonight at Canadian Tire, like for canoes or all-season tires or anything in between. They're shopping for valuable points.
And they are, and the more I look at this qualifying grid, Justin, as we continue to go ahead and almost get ready to race here, the one thing I'm noticing is how close these trucks are at a road course where we obviously thought there would be a little bit of a spread. That's going to tell me that this battle in the mid-pack is going to be really intense tonight.
Already qualifying is wrapped up, and one of the favorites for tonight, Mitchell DeJean putting down the hammer. 0.3 of a second the pole time. No one outside of him has set a time in the past the 117s in practices. Stephen Wilson starts in second. Jared Liebert and Alan Bowe start in row number 2. Row 3, Caden Honeycutt starts alongside Eddie Kerner, the Twinny Bird, with a construction helmet. He'll start alongside Zach Nichols and Seth the Merchant, who start in row number 4. Michael Gonzalez and Adam Gillen round out your top 10, Blake.
The number one driver in terms of iRating in the field will be Garrett Maines. He'll roll off from the inside of row number 6 with Danny Hansen to his outside. 13th will go to Brian Mercurio. 14th will be to Dylan C. Jones. 15th will be Garrett Conrath. 16th, Anthony Burrows. 17th is Jake Matheson. 18th is Ryan Doucette. 19th rolling off will be Derek Justinson. 20th will be Femi Olot.
Will Norton deep in the field tonight at 117.9 puts him 21st, while Kevin King, one of the drivers on the bubble spot tonight. He's in P22 in qualifying. One of the drivers inside the top 20 is Andrew Freenosh. He starts 23rd, while Daniel Falkingham brings one of the SVG machines to top split for one of the first times this season. Alec Martinez starts in 25th with Ronald Pratt 26th. Last driver to qualify, Brian Blackford, a 119.3. 3 drivers elected not to put in times. Brendan Bullios for Horizon, Donovan Strauss, and Casey Tucker for Slip Angle Motorsports. We'd like to also wish a happy birthday to Derek Justice as these drivers get all set to go to race 55 laps, 135.2 miles, and 207.7 kilometers, Ricky.
Absolutely, and this is going to be completely different to what we saw last week on the oval courses here. These guys are going to be turning right and left tonight. As you can see, the temperature on track right now, 76 degrees, and the track temp is 108, so these trucks are going to be really loose going around this Canadian Tire Motorsports Park, and that's going to make these trucks, well, battle maybe a little bit harder, but somebody who I'm expecting to run away with this one is Mitchell DeJean, who is on the pole for this race, and no surprise by anybody here, that VRS truck, that Toyota in the lead here. He's definitely going to show what he has on the road courses like always.
And a new feature for tonight's broadcast, you'll see in the right-hand corner of your screen a track map to see where the competitors are tonight. The leader will have the green dot you see there. You'll also see various different dots as the race goes on tonight for the other different competitors across the track. But the man who starts on the outside front row, Blake, said on social media earlier today, his goal, stay within 40 seconds. How difficult do you think it will be to keep up with the 10 machine, who is the favorite for tonight, especially with experience on the road courses in the Rallycross World Championship? And oh, by the way, the team he's a part of in the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series has won the past year and a half's worth of road course events.
Well, I think you laid it out there perfectly, Justin. I don't know if there's anybody out here that can beat Mitchell DeJean other than the driver himself. I think it's just going to be one of those cases where you're going to have to rely on a mistake to be made, which we know DeJean, believe it or not, he is human, so it's possible, but for somebody of his road course caliber, it's going to take a lot for some type of incident. But we know with Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, with the elevation changes, with how aggressive he had to be braking, especially at some of the downhill sections, that, I mean, all it takes is overrunning a corner just a little bit. You're into the grass, and from there, you're just kind of along for the ride. So we'll just obviously have to watch all these drivers who will try to minimize their mistakes. But in terms of raw speed, it's going to be hard to find somebody that's going to beat this 10 VRS Toyota tonight.
Keep in mind, 6 drivers enter tonight in the top 6 with and without drops. Wilson, Alan Bowes, Jake Matheson, Ryan Doucette, Jose Solis Jr., Eddie Kerner, If they continue to compete in this series, they are currently locked in. Everybody else looking for valuable points tonight. Safety car is off. We're underway from north of the border for Road to Pro action from Canadian Tire Motorsport Park.
And they're going to dive off into turn one. You can see De Jong already with that commanding lead of 2 car lengths. Everybody going to use up that curb there. That's a lot that you're going to see throughout this whole entire race, is these drivers abusing the inside and outside curbs to try and get those trucks to turn, whether it's to tighten them up a little bit or loosening them up in the center of the corners. So as you see these drivers take the long right-hander here, De Jong just keeping that truck planted and not sliding the rear tires, which is not what you want to do, is heat up these tires on this track. It'll make the rest of your run really bad.
And we were watching one in qualifying, Blake. For that 10 machine, right here was one of his best sections. Barely any wheel hop, and the way he was able to execute on corner exit. It's one of the most important sections, Moss Corner, to try and set up to one of the best passing opportunities on the track, the Mario Andretti straightaway on this first lap.
It certainly is one of the strong points for Mitchell De Jong. However, a little bit of contact here back in the pack as one truck is stopped in the middle of the racetrack here on the Mario Andretti straightaway. It's Brian Mercurio stopped in the middle of the racetrack. Something obviously amiss on that machine as he just cannot find a way to get it going here. He's just turning his engine over and over. Is obviously some type of issue befallen Brian Mercurio.
And what a time for a technical issue to happen. He was the next driver in line to potentially lock himself in with a decent points finish tonight. But right there, apparently his steering wheel, Ricky, came undone. And in some cases, if depending on your steering wheel, you lose all throttle response. He lost all throttle response and had to use the toe right there to end off lap number 1.
Yeah, and that's something that even if you don't have any pedal response, or you do have it when you don't have the wheel on the car, especially going down the Andretti straight, which is almost a kind of right-hand hook straightaway, you don't want to lose the feeling in the wheel there, and you definitely don't want it to come off. So unfortunate equipment malfunction there for him early on in this race here. He's going to get the quick toe. He's going to try and get back out on track, but with no yellows coming out and only the sector yellows on a road course here on iRacing, it's doubtful that he'll be able to salvage even a top 10 finish out of this race.
Also more trouble for Alec Martinez now. He spun out coming out of Moss Corner. He was at the back of the field. He's now at least 5 seconds behind the other competitors. He was side by side with Casey Tucker. With John already leaned by 1.4 seconds. Heading to the end of lap number 2 of this track. 10 corners around Canadian Tire Motorsport Park. And a lot of sweeping corners. And it can be difficult to keep a good rhythm here because Ricky touched upon it, Blake. Lots of fall off here expected for tonight's race, but also the dangers in Sector 1, especially with Clayton Corner and Quebec Corner.
Oh, certainly. There's a lot of tire fall off, and for anybody that runs a lot of these road courses, especially on with these oval cars, with these NASCAR influenced machines, there's a lot of tire fall off, particularly in the rear tires. So that makes it a pretty difficult balancing game between how hard you want to get on throttle off a corner exit, and you're just having to manage, I think, a lot differently than a lot of the road course racing that some of the road course aces out here are used to doing. So it's just something that you have to build in, and obviously you mentioned with the heavy fall off, setups are going to come into play here. So which team out here brings that speed and obviously are going to put the least amount of wear on the tires to be ready for that long run? Again, there are going to be no caution flags in this race, so we're pretty much all set on a one-stop strategy. So you're going to have to go all the way to lap 27, lap 28 on this run no matter what. So it's pretty much a guarantee that you have to have that long run pace to have any sort of shot here tonight. You're not going to get bailed out by a yellow flag.
100% agree with you on that, Mark. As you look on board with your race leader, he's off and away, still troubled though out of the final corner. Will Norton, Kevin King, Jake Matheson, several others involved right at the start and finish line. This has been a trouble spot at the end of races for the NASCAR Gander RV and Outdoors Truck Series here. It's a trouble spot today on lap number 3.
Yeah, definitely going to be a trouble spot for these drivers. It's one of those spots on the track that is so tight, as we'll take a look at the replay to see what happens here. And Ryan Doucette just going to lose the rear end of that truck. And Jake Matheson, very fortunately, was able to get down on the brakes, and some more contact being made through other trucks. It comes back across the track to collect the 4 car of Drew Freenage. So he's going to get some contact, heavy contact there But it's one of those parts of the track that is so tight comparable to the rest of the speedway that you come through this corner, you see wrecks happening, there's people sideways, and there's just nowhere to go.
Should note, two of those trucks in that incident, King and Freenosh, Blake, were two drivers trying to hold on to bubble positions. Andrew came into tonight 18th in the point standings, just 31 estimated points ahead with drops in the standings. Kevin King, he was 27 points back, and it's one of his first top split races of the season. Not how you wanted to start. It's more trouble down the front stretch. Anthony Burrows is now off the racetrack in the mid-pack.
We're already seeing this only at 4 laps in. It's another, I guess, incident here where somebody hitting that curb and just having a lot of instability in the truck. Already 4 laps in, we talked about significant tire fall off. We're already seeing that 5 laps in. We're not even 20% into a full run. So for a lot of these guys, obviously, I think we know who our heavy hitters are today. But this is going to be a race of attrition for a lot of these guys that maybe felt like they didn't have the speed to come here and compete tonight. They just have to keep it in one piece, and they may be able to do it right there. As you see, Burrows just gets loose after running into the curb there on the last right-hander here, and just gets that thing up and out of shape. I know I talked to a couple of these teams, and Nexus Esports was definitely one of those that felt there was a little bit of instability in their race truck, and obviously we've already seen that. A couple of their drivers running into issues here, Alec Martinez, Anthony Burrows. So Nexus, who's been awfully strong on the ovals as of late, not bringing as much speed or stability to the road courses here, at least to start this one out.
They still have one driver in the top 5, though. That's the bright spot. That's Caden Honeycutt, who just lost a little bit of the back end coming down the front stretch. Alan Bose takes advantage. And remember, Eddie Kerner was a part of that group, so was Jarrett Liebert before they switched over to Dead Zone Racing before the last race at Las Vegas. Should note that a majority of those two teams are still inside the top 10 despite some of the struggles for a couple of the Nexus trucks to the back of the field so far, Ricky.
Yeah, and that's one thing that can really kind of put a dampener on a driver's season, especially in Road to Pro, is changing from team to team. You think that the chemistry in the real-life Gander Outdoors Truck Series of the teams having to know each other and really understanding what they like in a truck, it's the same way here on iRacing with the Road to Pro Series. You really have to understand the drivers that are on your team, whether you're a setup builder or just a teammate, to try and help each other out. So switching through a team midway through the season, even in the first couple of races, can be really tough and kind of stay with you almost through the end of the Road to Pro season. So it's nice when you see a team come together off of some hardships from another team and then really have that good chemistry to try and run up inside the top 5 and the top 10 like Caden Honeycutt is doing.
Absolutely. Curly Honeycutt is in P5. Carter Curley in 6th spot. Zach Nichols in 7th. The leader of this train, though, is Alan Bose. Remember, Total Advantage has done such a good job this season. Majority of their drivers, Blake, have been in and around the top 20. Lennon Huffman has been a big part of this organization. Spoke with Steven Wilson after that race in Las Vegas. Helped a lot with the advice on some of the drivers, especially including their social media presences, and along with the branding for this organization. And it's helped them, I think, thrive in 2020.
It certainly has. You have to marvel at the work they've been able to do coming on really mid-season to do a lot of this work and establish that Total Advantage brand. But they've done it well here in the Road to Pro Series, backing some drivers that have had some awfully strong runs the last couple of weeks. So you love to see it for that team. But I'm looking out now, and there is a huge pack of trucks. And, you know, this is what I thought we were going to see, Justin, is, you know, obviously I think there are some drivers that are comfortable with the road courses. Obviously, some teams brought a lot of speed here, but I'm looking at around this battle for 10th, 8th, 9th. There are a ton of trucks here all grouped together. You call it about 8th through 13th. There's a big line of trucks here. Kind of Garrett Maines at the back of it. And you look at the front of it, it's Alan Bose kind of leading everybody. So there is a huge, huge group here from about 4th through 11th that are all breathing down each other's necks. And I think with the top qualifying times that we saw from these guys, and with qualifying and race setups being relatively similar out here tonight on the road course, I think that's what you're going to see, is that up here in the mid-pack around 10th position, there's going to be quite a battle between these guys. And you know, again, we saw a lot of attrition already. Hopefully something doesn't happen, because it could take out a lot of trucks here.
And one of the main things here, Ricky, too, when it comes to road course racing is it's not just about setup, even when it comes to these trucks as we're seeing here tonight. It also comes down to the skill of the driver because it's difficult to go left and right, hit your brake marks, try not burn up the tires, try not hit other trucks, and take advantage of slides such as this with Gonzalez trying to get a run into Merchant. It takes a lot of talent to run around this racetrack.
Absolutely, and it all comes down to just how willing you are to push that truck to the boundaries that it has permitted it. And of course, the setup, like you said, still does matter because it gives that driver the confidence to push those boundaries. But when it comes to the end ordeal, it's all about the driver and how hard they can push that vehicle into every single corner. What their shifting points can be is now we see coming through the White's corners here at the end of the track, we have a side-by-side battle of two trucks, and they're going to straighten that one out as they go off into turn one now. But it's all going to come down to the driver talent and how these guys truly push their trucks and just show the true talent that they have here. And that's really what's going to make a good iRacing Pro Series driver out of this. So a lot of these guys that you see performing well on the road courses will be some of these guys that you'll end up seeing in the Pro Series later on in their iRacing careers.
Trouble for Donovan Strauss. He was your biggest mover in the race before he became the first victim of Clayton Corner. And we were talking about this before the race tonight, guys. If you hit the grass or end up overshooting the corner, you're going to have a rough time. And for him, it led to a rough tumble upside down for the number 15 truck in the split and the number 51 truck logoed car.
And that's certainly the case as you look here. Again, it's going to come down into corner number 2. Gets through everything fine right here. And I think that's the main point to take away from this is that, you see a little bit of a slide right there. We've seen that out of a lot of trucks right now. So obviously heated up the rear tires, not feeling good about that race truck. And you're going to see it right here. Just gets going to the right just a little bit too much as he's entering the corner. And once that right rear tire right there, it scrapes the grass. And from there, he just doesn't have control. As you see heavy contact with the right door of that truck. And that is going to be a lot of damage for the Burton Kligerman esports driver that early on was very competitive here in Road to Pro. As you see, he does a barrel roll right there, is able to get it going straight, may avoid some engine damage. But I have to say, I didn't see anybody being able to do a barrel roll and still run on the racetrack. But he's going to have to come down pit road, repair some of that, and obviously make an extra pit stop. So bad luck for Donovan Strauss. Who is not what he needed for somebody who's now on the outside looking in terms of the point standings.
Yeah, came in tonight 23rd without drops in the point standings, also in the top 22 with drops for tonight's action. But plenty of racing action coming up throughout the entire week. Many of these drivers you see tonight are getting ready to take part in the Esports Racing League tomorrow night. That takes place in Michigan International Speedway. Many drivers will have to qualify their way in. 54 drivers battling for a chance to compete on twitch.tv/ERL Racing to begin the championship campaign at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Then, on the weekend, the GameWorks Racing Series heads to Texas Motor Speedway on August the 9th. That starts at 8 p.m. Eastern Time at twitch.tv/Podium Esports. The man you're on board with right now, Garrett Maines, won the first 2 races in that series. Then, Sim 500 Trans Service Cup Series action heads to the Daytona Road Course for the Nemesis Lab 125 on August the 10th. That's at 9 p.m. Eastern Time on twitch.tv/Podium Esports. Your last winner in that series, Daniel Falkingham, is in P19 for reference sake. And then, the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series says hello to the Daytona Road Course. Get a preview of what to expect when the Cup drivers and more hit the road course for the first time in its history on August 11th. That's at 9 p.m. Eastern Time on iRacing's Twitch, Facebook, and YouTube feeds. Plenty of action coming up, to say the very least, this weekend and throughout the next few days, Blake. First things first, lots of anticipation as a lot of bumping and banging that's going, getting hit from behind.
And this is what we are starting to see as these drivers continue to lose the handling on their trucks right now. Not too hot. Well, actually a little bit hotter for a 76-degree ambient temperature 106 on the track temp. So it's much harder than we've seen even in a couple of recent races. You mentioned Las Vegas and a couple other tracks we've been to. This is the hottest the track has been in a while. So starting to get really slick here. You see Adam Gilliland almost get into the 32 of Danny Hansen as they work their way down the front straightaway here. Garrett Main's going to look to the inside. And this is, again, where you have to admit, and a bit of a call out there from Adam Gilliland saying, hey, Garrett Maines, don't do that again, or there may be more coming to you. And they're going to go after it as he sends Danny Hansen off into the grass. Adam Gilliland shoves him out the way, move Garrett Maines through.
Oh, that is absolutely huge. Danny Hansen, top 20 in points. This is one of his best overall SOFs to compete in for Road to Pro this season. Let's take a look at what happened as the battle's not over. This is Hansen, who got hit from the back end by Gilliland after pressure from Maines.
Yeah, and that's just that hard racing that you're going to see here at Canadian Tires. These guys are going to race so close, so hard. And you think that these guys, they probably get side by side a couple times on the oval courses, but then start to spread out, and then pit strategy comes in. When you're racing side by side with a guy for 10 corners, 5 laps in a row, you eventually get tired of riding behind him. And you could see the result of Adam Gilliland just being tired of riding behind that 32 truck and getting into the back of him, booting him off into the second turn there. And that's the end result.
Meanwhile, by the way, your race leader is ahead by almost 4 seconds compared to Steven Wilson. Wilson, though, has already pulled about 4 seconds to the next truck in Jarrett Liebert. Then it's an error about 3 seconds to Alan Bowes. The first grouping of trucks is still Honeycutt, Kerner, and Nichols on the track. It's been pretty clear-cut. The top 4 best drivers, and when it comes to road course racing, the series here, Blake, are all in the top 4 to gain the pace they have and to grow the gaps they've had, you see on the left side of your screen.
Well, and I think that just goes back to what we were talking about earlier, Justin, is minimizing mistakes is going to be key, not just for De Jong, who obviously has the pace to win this race, but Steven Wilson, Jarrett Liebert, these guys that are up here. You talk about getting through this. We're about halfway through this run we're going to see, so conserving those tires to the end of the run, and especially for a guy like De Jong, who may have almost as large as a 6 or 7 second lead by the time we approach green flag pit stops, is getting on the pit road and being a little more conservative, I'm sure, than you would like to see. Because the last thing you need to do, especially if you're De Jong and you're just out here showing the way, is the last thing you want to do is speed on pit road or make another mistake like that. So for a lot of these guys that have really separated themselves and have put themselves in a really good spot, guys like Liebert, Bowes, to have those great point stays, Caden Honeycutt looking to recover after a couple of tough luck races here in the Road to Pro Series. This is their opportunity. So again, just not making mistakes. They obviously have the speed to go out there, get it done, and finish top 5 in this race.
So at this point, with some of the gaps that are broken out here, Ricky, what would you try and do to try and not necessarily try and put a Band-Aid on it, but try and find a way to regain some pace or close up some of those larger margins? Do you try a different strategy, or do you try and save right now and then try and push at the end of the stint, let's say? What would you do?
Well, I mean, it all comes down to what the driver is most comfortable doing. A lot of people prefer the strategy because they know that their skills are not on the road courses. And that's definitely not something to be ashamed to admit, is that you're not better on the road courses than you are in the ovals. So for drivers that are willing to admit that, they're going to want to play that strategy card. But for the drivers who think they may have what it takes here on the road courses to close some of those gaps, you're going to have to try something different. The only thing I can compare it to is something of almost dirt racing, where you search around the track, you try and find a different line. It's somewhere similar to road course racing. You're going to want to try a different line. Maybe entering a corner shallow, widening the entrance up, opening up your exit, closing it. It's all going to come down to little minute things that these drivers can change in their driving style to try and close those gaps.
By the way, should note Adam Gilliland just let by Derek Justice for P11. That's what you see now on your screen. We're joined by a special guest now from the NASCAR Xfinity Series. Anthony Alfredo now joins us in eNASCAR iRacing Road to Pro Series coverage. He is also the founder and organizer of the ERL, which is debuting its second season tomorrow night. Thank you very much for joining us, Anthony. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well, thank you. I appreciate you guys letting me hop in here as you announce this awesome Road to Pro race going on.
First things first, I'm not sure how much you've gotten the chance to see how things are going, especially with you doing some streaming, including some of the action, but what's your take on a race such as this at a track that can be fairly tricky but fun at the same time, like Canadian Tire?
That's a great question, because for me, it reminds me of short track racing pretty much, to see these guys be so close. Some of these battles, these guys are, you can lay a blanket over groups of them at times, and that makes it really exciting for not only the viewers but even the competitors. And I know as a race car driver myself, on iRacing and in real life, sim to reality, it's always a blast. So just like you guys were talking about different approaches you can have to the racetrack and making different moves and running different lines, someone could be faster in one part and another could be a lot faster in another section. So that's what puts on such a great race like the one we see here in the Road to Pro Series at Canadian Tire.
Now, many of these drivers tonight in this race, in fact, Anthony, just so happen to be also going to be fighting for the chance to start in the first race of Season 2 of the ERL. How has the preparation been like, especially with things ramping up the past week or so with the last of the time attacks and the last of the qualifying races?
It's definitely been busy and hectic for a lot of drivers and myself as a league owner, but I cannot wait for tomorrow night. It's going to be awesome because we have one of the most competitive groups of drivers I've ever seen organized in a hosted league. The Esports Racing League is going to put on some great showing. We've obviously got a awesome championship personnel thanks to our title sponsor, SimSeats Driving Simulators, and multiple individual race sponsors, just like tomorrow night's Belly Up Sports 110 at Michigan. So competitors are going to be racing for prize money each week, and of course have a shot at a championship bonus. And there's 64 drivers, but only 40 get to start the race each week. So a lot of people are going to be sent home each week, which makes it also exciting for everyone to have to qualify their way in and keep the intensity up. And as you mentioned, to narrow it down from almost 300 people that attempted to make the league in the time attack, and then following that, narrow it down from 80 to just the final 64 through some heat racing was intense for a lot of people and fun to watch.
How difficult has it been to balance that with your racing career, especially with your events in the NASCAR Xfinity Series the past few months, and as well, the ARCA Series, the ARCA Menard Series start, rather, you're having this weekend at Michigan?
It's definitely been a challenge, but this is a brainchild of mine, something I've been wanting to do for a very long time because of my passion for gaming and esports. And when I got into racing, of course, that crossover was iRacing and sim racing. So to be able to do this is important to me and means a lot to me, which is why I work as hard as I can to not only put the effort into it, but of course work hard to find the time and make the time to put into this. And of course it wouldn't be possible without everyone at Podium Esports and guys such as yourself to help make it possible so that we can do things properly and have the high quality that we want for the Esports Racing League events.
Looking along as a mistake from Adam Gillen off the racetrack. He's now back to P18, -8 for him. Based on your experience, how tricky can it be to drive overall on a road course such as this? And what type of respect do you have for these competitors who are looking to try and make the pro qualifying series for the winter time for a chance to be in the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series as Gonzalez is having trouble?
Oh, I have a ton of respect. The biggest thing is, or one of the coolest things I should say is in the Esports Racing League, a lot of these guys I'm watching right now are in the league. And they get to race against some Coca-Cola iRacing Series drivers that happen to also be in the Esports Racing League. So to see them making names for themselves in the sim community at one of the highest levels and progress to the highest level is just exciting to watch. I can appreciate that from not only my experience on the simulator, but of course my experience in real life trying to climb the ladder. A lot of it's very similar, and these kids work really hard. They're all racers, they're all competitors, and they all want it. So to see them put the effort in and the time in and just make the most out of each race is very exciting.
Right now, the race lead is now up to 5 seconds, by the way, as you see some of the gaps now on your screen before the pit stop windows. Overall, how do you expect this season to go, especially, as you mentioned, lots of sponsors coming on board, lots of talent coming into play? What type of championship battle should fans expect come tomorrow night when it kicks off?
That's a great question, Justin. It's going to be difficult to top last year as we saw the championship be determined off the final corner of the final lap of the race. Because it was tied between Alex Bell and Jimmy Mullis. Jimmy ultimately prevailed off turn 4 at Charlotte and got the championship, and I wouldn't be surprised to see something like that again, though, this year, only because of the fact that the competition's even fiercer this season. So it's going to be a blast, and I think it's going to be a battle for points each and every week, and it's going to be really, really exciting to watch, and I'd like to get in the car a couple times and run some myself to battle it out with those guys.
Second last very quick question here. Have you ever thought of racing in the Road to Pro Series, and will we potentially see you try and make a run at it to try and run on the virtual side as well as the pro side in real life?
100%. I'd absolutely love to. Right now, I don't quite have the time to dedicate to a full season, but I'm definitely strongly considering even just running some select events to get used to the competition, the tracks, and see where I need to get better so that one day maybe I can make a full swing at it and go after a title.
Anything else you'd like to add before we let you get going?
No, that's pretty much it. I just want to thank everyone for their time. Hope everyone enjoys the race, and thank you guys for supporting the ERL, and I'm looking forward to getting it started tomorrow night. I hope everyone tunes in.
Thank you very much for taking the time to speak with us and catching up, especially with this great Road to Pro race. Have a good night, Anthony.
You too. Thank you.
That's Anthony Alfredo of Richard Childress Racing, and also the organizer and founder of the Esports Racing League, kicking off tomorrow night. It's been a very entertaining race, to say the very least, so far, guys. Blake, you just so happen to be also trying to qualify your way into the race tomorrow night.
Yeah, it's definitely something that I've looked forward to, and like he mentioned, was just going through the heats and whatnot, and everything you had to do to qualify for that league. I mean, there are some incredibly strong drivers. Obviously, you have a lot of guys out here that are in that race. Some eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series drivers, so no doubt about it, there are a lot of big names that are going to be in that. So should be very competitive and a very fun show to watch. And even as y'all were talking, I was still looking at all these battles that are going on the racetrack, as there's been a lot of movement here amongst a couple of guys. A few that I've kept my eye on. Derek Justice started back in the 19th position, has worked his way up into the top 10, so a very nice, solid run out of the Baskin-Robbins Toyota. Perhaps the one that catches our eye. I feel like we say this every week, Justin. Casey Tucker started shotgun on the field and is already up to 13th and is pulled up to the back of Dylan Jones and Garrett Conrath looking for 11th. So Casey Tucker, he hasn't pulled a qualifying lap. I don't even know if he's pulled a qualifying lap all season. He likes to start in the back. He likes the challenge of racing forward. And what another magnificent job he's done, missing a couple of accidents that have happened in front of him, but also seems to have some speed in that VRS Ford F-150. So nice job for Casey Tucker. I feel like we say it every week that he's always finding himself around 15th. Well, about halfway through, he's already up to 13th, even looking for 11th with Conrath and Jones right in front of him.
For those wondering, why doesn't he put in qualifying times if he's got the pace? Remember, he ran in the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series back in 2019. He answered part of that question on social media after the Las Vegas race, where he had the most positions gained in that one. He said he likes passing trucks. Let's put it that way. He's passed 17 of them for positions so far tonight. As we approach the pit stop window, 34 laps to go this time by. Now that comes the question here, how long do you try and stretch it? We mentioned expecting it to split it in half. When do you expect to see, in total, some of these trucks starting to duck down here, Ricky?
It's all going to come down to when these drivers feel that handling is completely gone in these trucks. I mean, the fuel window, of course, is about halfway through this race, maybe a little bit over. So these guys are definitely going to have to get to that point. But after that, and any additional laps that they're going to run after the halfway point of this race, which we're just creeping up on here in a couple or a handful of laps, is going to be when the handling goes out on these trucks completely. You've seen the trucks sliding around, getting side by side and touching each other a little bit because the handling isn't there. The track's hot. These trucks, they're top heavy. They like to slide around, not a lot of weight on the bottom side of them. So these guys are going to try and stay out as long as they possibly can to try and preserve that set of tires for a late run here to the finish. And of course, no cautions. You don't have to worry about a strategy call with a caution coming out messing up your strategy. But these guys are going to want to save that nice set of sticker tires sitting in the pit road for as late as possible.
Big mistake there from Honeycutt as he lets Eddie Kerneron go in the second part of Moss Corner, as he's now shuffled back to P6. Want to also ask you about this, Ricky. Just so happens to have a Friends of Foundation of Jacqueline Eicherer, say, foundation truck on the machine. That's also just so happened to be a sponsor of Anthony Alfredo. It's an alternative paint scheme for that machine for Nexus Esports. No charity very close to your heart when it comes to racing.
Yeah, charities and racing are always something that really goes together well, because no matter what you're supporting, when you bring it into a sport that you love, of course, when I was younger, I had my charity Racing for a Cause, and just bringing something that was near and dear to my heart into the sport that I loved was something amazing. And to raise awareness and to help whatever the cause may be that you're doing for a charity, it's so helpful, and it's an amazing feeling, not just kind of that feeling that you have to, give you the warm and fuzzies. It's one of those things where you enjoy helping people, and you're doing something you love to help people, to show people exactly what your cause is, whether it's raising the money for the charity that you're supporting, whether it's doing this, whether it's doing that. So it's a great cause on any car that these guys decide to put that on there, because you're giving up marketing space, but they don't care. They want to help the causes that they're supporting.
Looking at the grouping right now for about 8th on back. These fantastic views you're seeing tonight, by the way, brought to you by Zach Johnson and STN. Some beautiful camera angles throughout this evening with Ryan Bauer pressing the buttons in the production trailer tonight with 32 to go this time by. One of the trucks you see in the backdrop, though, that's Garrett Maines. He's been quietly running around this spot all race, 11th through 9th. Still trying to find a way around Seth the Merchant as he's all over the back bumper and allowing Derek Justice now back in the fight. Justice, as we've seen all season, Blake, great on the long runs. He's a +9 as he goes down the front.
And I really wouldn't expect anything else from this driver. I remember running this track with him on NR 2003. Golly, you could probably call it about 8 or 9 years ago now. And obviously he was very, very good there. Obviously didn't put in the qualifying effort that he wanted to, I'm sure. Here again, it was about 6 or 7 tenths of a second that separated him from even Steven Wilson, who started up in the 2nd spot. So track position is key, but you see right here, able to carry that speed, save those tires, and he's going to go by, and it looks like Garrett Mates is going to surrender that to him. So Derek Justice here, again, one of those drivers who is above the cut line when you look at drops, is about 207 points coming into tonight, above that top 20 spot. He just needs to come in here after not starting where he wanted to in qualifying, get that top 10 finish, and he's certainly on pace to do that and not hurt himself here in the points tonight. The one thing that I guess I have to report, and again, we covered it earlier in our coverage, was Brian Mercurio, who was sitting at 8th with drops and was really looking forward to tonight, a guy who really loves these road courses, and that mechanical issue that he suffered is going to put a real damper and put him right back in the hunt to stay in the top 20.
And here's the thing when it comes to a road course race such as this too. Mitchell DeJong, this is a way to grow even more points. He's in the top 10, mind you, in the point standings, as we talked about. But for some drivers who may not have the strength on the road courses here, Ricky, it's not just as simple as, oh, I'm just going to dodge Canadian Tire Motorsport Park. Remember, we raced at the Charlotte Roval earlier on in the campaign, so you had to take your poison. Either challenge yourself at the Roval or challenge yourself at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park, and you have to race a road course at least once.
Exactly, and you only get one drop race, so even if these drivers did want to skip one of the road courses, they're going to have to run the other one to be competitive in the points. And you see a lot of guys that you don't normally see up at the front of the field. At least you don't normally see racing for a win on the oval courses, and it's great to see this road course stuff be a part of the Road to Pro series. It gives the diversity in the series and the driving skill that these drivers have, going from the ovals to road courses to short tracks to the mile and a halfs and bigger. So it gives you that great variation between racetracks to show exactly what these drivers have to offer when they get that chance to try and make it into the Pro Series.
30 to go this time by, and apparently the drivers are starting to have fun, by the way, in the 3rd or 4th grouping. There's also been a change for position and a pit stop. Derek Justice going for a very early undercut here, Blake, at 30 laps to go.
And this is an interesting call from Derek Justice. So I think he's thinking that maybe he can get a little bit ahead of this traffic, and Garrett Maines and Seth the Merchant. Obviously, we talk about the tire fall off here has really grown to about 3 or 4 seconds. So Justice, I think that's just a track position play, but you have to remember that with no caution flags to help, he's going to have to go a lap or two further on the back half of this run as the track temperature continues to heat up. That's just something he'll have to be aware of. But I think for the track position that he could get over Garrett Maines or Seth the Merchant that he was battling with, I think it's a smart pit call by driver and spotter Connor Crichton to try and come down here and get this, especially get this clean track out of pit road.
The truck you see, by the way, on your screen just had an off track coming out of Quebec corner. That's why he's lost a lot more time. Been a rough stint for Adam Gilliland as he's coming to 29 laps to go. Right now, back in behind him, that's Daniel Falkingham, who again is making one of his first top split starts of the season. He's been competing in the second and third splits in Road to Pro in this competition in 2020. We talked about him and known for his performances in Sim 500 and various other series. Quietly having a clean race tonight, as several more drivers, though, just ducked down to pit. Femi Olot, Danny Hansen are now in.
Yeah, and Femi Olot was part of that big grouping there right in front of Adam Gilliland and Daniel Falkingham that were battling really hard. So maybe those drivers kind of burn off those tires. Like I said, they're going to dive down when the handling starts to go away, and they're coming down pit road right now as a field, or I guess a pack that has just crossed the start-finish line was Jake Matheson and Briar LaPrade, and they're almost 2 to 3 wide here, absolutely brawling down into turn 2 now, and a truck hard in the wall. That's the 19, and multiple trucks involved in turn 2.
And Justice in it.
And I'm not sure what happened there. I didn't even see. I saw a truck hit sideways and multiple trucks involved there. Derek Justice, and I think the motor's done.
Yes, that's a blown engine, and that's going to be a heart punch right there. That grouping of drivers he was just keeping up with was talking about that they were having a lot of fun fighting back and forth. Boyos, LaPrade, Matheson were in that group. Things turned for the worse, though, once they got out of turn 1 and heading towards Clayton Corner, Blake.
Well, and you see for Justice, it's really kind of a blind corner. Again, you're going downhill, so you kind of see these guys off. They're 3 wide in front of him, and you see Briar, you don't really get a notice of that, and then, of course, he just bounces right off the wall, right into traffic, and Justice is side by side right beside him, so you don't really know where to go. And, I mean, unfortunately, LaPrade off the track, and obviously Derek Justice is going to get a horrible end of that with that early call to come down pit road early. That's going to put an end to his day, and that truck is up in a heap of smoke. So really unfortunate luck for Derek Justice, who, again, as we were mentioning, was just looking to bring it home with a solid point stay, and this is going to make him have to worry these last couple of weeks when they head out to Texas, to Martinsville, to Phoenix, and those aren't going to be tracks that you're going to want to have your season come down to. As you see, our leader, Mitchell DeJong, he's now on pit road.
And this is coming to the halfway point of the race, so this is splitting it right up the middle. Last time by, several drivers elected to come down to pit, including Honeycutt, Matheson, Norden, and many other competitors who were up in the lead group. Jared Liebert also came down this time by. Bose, though, is stretching it for another lap with 27 to go. Eddie Kerner is also ducked down to the pit lane. Garrett Maines also stretching it another lap this time.
And Jake Matheson actually did not come down pit road. He had a shunt going off into turn 2, the same place where Briar LaPrade had just had his incident. It looks like he got a little bit too far on the outside there and caught the grass like we saw earlier in the race. No contact made for the 52 truck, but he got a little sideways there and lost a bunch of time. So still not a pit stop for the 52 truck, and just terrible luck for him today.
Yes, indeed. And there he goes right there. Down the pit lane this time by the drivers who have not yet pit: Bose, Maines, DeMerchant, Gilliland, Burrows, along with Bullios, as we talked about. Kevin King also hasn't come down for a service in this race so far. They can go an extra couple laps, though, on the tank here, Blake.
They can, and again, this is just another, call where maybe they don't want to go quite as long. They think if they can just save their tires and get it over with now, that by the end of next run, they'll have some fresher tires, some fresher rubber. So you'll see Bose, he'll make his trip onto pit road right there. And something of note, when I remember I was hearing yesterday from Briar LaPrade, rather, that he was not planning on racing tonight, that obviously he had kind of had his fair share of bad luck throughout the season, was not planning to run, at least tonight on the road course. Thought his season in terms of making the top 20 was done, even though he'd be back for some later races. So a late decision to come out here today, and obviously runs off the track and, just makes a mistake that not only hurts him, but obviously hurts Derek Justice when you put it all together.
Yeah, that's going to absolutely sting. Derek Justice currently had his drop as the Daytona race to start the campaign. That's going to change now, as the last of the drivers outside of Andrew Freenosh have come down to pit. Casey Tucker, who tried to go low and has lost a couple spots, he's in P15 in this train. But as we've crossed the halfway point of tonight's race, it's time to bring you the iRacing Midway Race Break, brought to you by iRacing. iRacing is the world's premier online racing game. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat to experience today's newest form of competitive motorsport virtual racing, all from your home PC. Race virtually in Australian supercars, IndyCar, IMSA, NASCAR, the Run of Outlaws, the 24 Hours of Le Mans, and more. So far tonight, it's been domination station for one man, Mitchell DeJong in the VRS machine. He leads by more than 4 seconds over Steven Wilson. Jarrett Liebert is in P3, Alan Bowes is in 4th. Betty Kerner is in P5 with Caden Honeycutt quietly in P6, looking for a strong points haul tonight, entered this evening just inside the top 40. Zach Nichols looking to gain momentum back after being in the top 20 in the first half of the season in 7th, right in front of Garrett Maines. Fabio Watts in P9, running at the top 10 tonight. So far, Blake, is Seth DeMerchant, who also is looking for some momentum.
He certainly is after taking a couple off weeks. It'll be Anthony Burrows, who's currently scored the 11th spot, although it'll actually cycle back to Danny Hansen. 12th will be Will Norton in that pack, followed by Garrett Conrath in 13th. 14th is Michael Gonzalez. 15th on his march to the front is Casey Tucker. 16th is Dylan Jones. 17th is Drew Freenage after being involved in some early trouble. 18th is Daniel Falkingham for SPG. 19th is Adam Gilliland, who is off the pace here on the Mario Andretti straightaway. And yeah, that'll round out the top 20.
Brian Burrios just brought down the drip truck into the pit lane, this time by for a second pit stop. Kevin King is currently also in that grouping. The first drivers behind him on the pylon, by the way. Rockford now in 20th, Matheson 21st, Martinez 22nd. Drivers lap down, Kevin King, Adam Gilliland, LaPrade, Justice, and Strauss are still out of the race, but here's an interesting note. Ryan Doucette and Brian Mercurio both have come out of the pit lane with brand new motors. In 29th and 30th, they have a chance to jump Strauss on the pylon in the next couple laps and may be able to get as high as P26, depending on how things fare out in the second half of this race. This concludes tonight's iRacing Midway Race Break with over 170,000 drivers on the service and more than 90 laser scan tracks and cars to choose from now. iRacing is your portal to the racing world. Get on the track today at iRacing.com. We'll take a quick side-by-side. You're watching the eNASCAR iRacing Road to Pro Series, live from the virtual Canadian Tire Motorsport Park in Ontario.
We are back at North Wilkesboro, North Carolina, where the field is rolling out for the start of today's 400-lap race on this .625-mile racetrack. And just as the field comes around turn number 4, the sunshine peeks through, helping warm things here. Bill Elliott leads him down. Benny Parsons on the outside. The green flag flies, and the first Union 400 Winston Cup race from North Wilkesboro is underway. Everybody nicely through turns number 1 and 2 as Bill Elliott has the lead, and Dale Earnhardt has jumped into second position, followed by Benny Parsons and Bobby Allison. Here we go. It's just about to go away. They bump coming out of turn 4. Earnhardt gets the lead. We had just heard from our spotters that Neil Martin. Dale Earnhardt is on his last lap. This will be his 24th career win. Dale
23 laps to go, now down to 22 laps to go. Here for the eNASCAR iRacing Road to Pro Series, live on Podium Esports at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park. I'm Justin Prince, alongside me is Ricky Springer, alongside Blake McCandless. Ryan Mowers in the director's seat for tonight's action, powered by TopFlightPC.com. It's been an interesting race here on the road course so far. Many drivers are having some quiet runs, such as Dylan C. Jones. He's in P14. One of the drivers try to close in back inside the top 20 after being in that grouping earlier on in the campaign, as well as others who are looking to secure themselves those runs with how tonight has fared tonight here on this road course, Blake.
Yeah, there's a lot of drivers, again, like we talked about in this big pack. Even through our cycle of green flag pit stops, there is still a pretty close battle here going on, especially for the 10th position. Femi Olot, Danny Hansen, you see Will Norton, and obviously Casey Tucker all involved in this battle as well. Dylan Jones closely behind. So again, very even pace. A lot of these trucks finding, or at least bringing, similar setups, and these drivers, again, with how this road course is, there's not a ton of corners here. Not a very long road course, running 1 minute 15, 1 minute 16 seconds. You obviously have a lot of different places you could go to here on the iRacing service, but you know, with these long sweeping corners, long straightaways, it kind of evens these trucks up, and not surprised to see that in the mid-pack here, we see a lot of these teams that have brought very similar race trucks, drivers, very similar in terms of speed. And then, of course, you have what are, I guess you could just call the elite level talent that are just making mockery of the rest of the field, and DeJong, Wilson, Liebert, that have just checked out from the rest of the field.
Yeah, you see that green dot on the bottom right corner of your screen for those tuning in for the first time tonight. That's your race leader. The pink dot is currently the battle you're seeing on screen. The gap has grown to 7 seconds in total for the lead. This is the fight for P7, by the way, with Zach Nichols on screen. It's not as big, Ricky, as what some people are thinking, around 20, 30, 40 seconds, is it?
No, and I mean, you take a look at just how big a road course is comparable to what we go to on a weekly basis in the Road to Pro Series on the ovals. You know, something like 10 seconds is comparable to a 5-second gap on an oval. It's a lot of time relatively, but if you look at how big the track is, you look at how many spots there are to mess up, it's really not that much time. Now, once you start to get into those 40, 50-second ranges, especially at a track like Canadian Tire, where a normal lap time on a run is a 1 minute 20 to a 1 minute 21 second lap time, that's when you start to get into the danger zone that you could go a lap down by the end of the race.
Speaking of lap down, a lot of these drivers you may have noticed are dealing with some lap traffic right now. Drivers are dealing with drivers, say, like Derek Justice, who has been able to repair his motor, but now is several laps down. It's going to be important to make sure you reach these types of trucks, though, at the right moment at the right time, Blake, or otherwise you're going to potentially either put yourself up for grabs to lose a spot from behind, or, in turn, lose time yourself that you had gained on the others, like we're seeing with Garrett Maines, using essentially the buffer from behind and Brian Bullios, the lap truck, to run off and away as he nearly gets checked up by Justice.
Oh yeah, and Justice is trying to do all he can, get all the points possible that he can collect in this race, and you know that it's just like an oval, lap traffic and catching it at the right time, especially here on our road course where there isn't a specific designated lane on the outside or anything, because you're taking these left and right hand corners. So it's something that a lot of these guys who do have spotters out here, tons of spotters out here, that's something that either they need to coordinate ahead of time, or just be very aware and looking ahead for their driver to let them know, especially if they can't see because of the elevation changes here at Canadian Tire, about, hey, lap traffic's on your left or on your right, and whatnot. So that's a coordinated effort between the driver and the spotter to make sure everybody gets through that cleanly.
Shout out, by the way, to Mr. Kamikaze, who salutes us from Argentina tonight. Glad to have you joining us here for tonight's coverage here on Podium Esports. Already 19 laps to go. Mitchell DeJong has been the king of the field tonight. But the battles are not over, especially for the top 10, because Casey Tucker, your biggest mover, a plus 20 on field, 41 seconds back, just took away P10 from Femi Olot. Here comes Will Norton as well, trying to make it side by side. He backs off, though, in the Clayton corner.
Yeah, and that 28 truck has definitely been on rails pretty much the whole night here. Started in the 30th spot, like you said, into 10th now. That's 20 spots up on his starting position, and that VRS Ford is absolutely moving through this field as the truck off right there. I believe that's the 32 truck.
That's Hansen.
Yeah, Hansen going to go off there. Not quite sure if there was contact made or maybe he just kind of pushed himself off the track. We'll have to take a look back at that, JP. But, yeah, that 28 truck is on the move.
And you're going to see it right here on the inside of Quebec corner. Dylan Jones was providing a lot of pressure and just got to the quarter panel right here, Blake, on the dive.
Well,
Didn't make contact.
He gets to the quarter panel, and I mean, you look at that there. He doesn't hit him, but he pretty much runs him off the racetrack. Here's a great shot right here. I don't think there's contact, but I mean, he doesn't really give the 32 any room to go right there. Hansen really has no other option other than to get turned. Golly, look at that great shot by our camera crew right there. And I mean, Jones doesn't really leave him a truck with a room right there, so Hansen just has to collect it up, run off the racetrack. Isn't going to cost him a lot in terms of positions. He's still got a pretty considerable gap behind him that he doesn't have to worry about. So only going to cost him a handful of spots there. But if you're Danny Hansen, I mean, even the safer of the two routes, because otherwise you're getting turned and, you know, the tire barriers here, obviously going to do a lot of damage to that truck. So Hansen, perhaps a smart move there. It's Jones really sent it in deep there.
Looking back now at Nichols and DeMerchant. DeMerchant has kept his truck clean the entire night. He's been able to also keep up with this grouping as now Buios moves off to the side. That's a teammate, by the way, to the number 3 truck in tonight's field at iRacing. By the way, for those curious, 7,172 was your SOF for tonight's race estimated. Now with 17 to go, these positions I don't think are quite over yet. These are the types of battles now at this point, Ricky, that if you want to gain any points, this is likely your shot to try and do it now.
Yeah, and it's at this point in the race when you thought that you saw contact earlier, you thought you saw guys getting into each other and racing hard earlier in the race. This is the point when you really start to see it. These guys are going to scrub for every single position that they can possibly get out here on the racetrack, whether it's for 8th position, whether it's for the 3rd position, or whether it's just a position to make it inside the top 20. It is going to be a brawl between these drivers when they get next to each other, as we just saw with the 32 truck going off course and being forced off the track. It's going to come down to those little situations where you almost try and put the other driver in a situation to really take one over on himself, but force him off the racetrack. So we're going to see a lot more of that as we come into these closing laps.
Absolutely, and we talked about, mind you, especially Blake, that you don't want to also at the same time have it backfire, so to speak, in terms of tempers flaring for some of the tracks up on this head on the schedule, because there are plenty of tough tracks in the final stages of this season here. Texas, Martinsville, and don't forget about Phoenix are the last races currently on the calendar. That's a mile and a half. That can be very tricky with the different balances of the pavement as you take a look at the schedule on screen. Martinsville, which is known for its physical contact, and Phoenix, which could go any direction.
Yeah, you're exactly right, Justin. Especially if the new configuration of the Texas Motor Speedway races, you have to be insanely aggressive to protect your track position, even on the back straightaway at Texas. So that's a situation these guys don't want to have to put themselves in. But unfortunately, with how competitive this field is, we knew that looking at these last couple of races, you're going to have about 10 or 15 drivers who still realistically have a shot to battle right around that 20th place bubble in the point standings. And obviously, it's a place where you can kind of rub some elbows a little bit, especially at Martinsville, even at Texas as well. A lot can happen there. So a lot of these guys, they're gonna have a very stressful about 6 weeks of work here of preparation and just worrying about how those races are going to go, because as straightforward as a lot of these races have been, particularly in the top split, those couple of tracks I think are going to provide a lot of attrition for a lot of these guys. So it's gonna be a very stressful couple of weeks for a lot of these drivers who are right around that bubble.
15 laps to go here in Canada. We'll take a quick step aside, side-by-side action. You're watching eNASCAR iRacing Road to Pro Series coverage from Canadian Tire Motorsport Park. Stick around. Back live on Podium Esports from Canadian Tire Motorsport Park in Bowmanville, Ontario. Justin Prince alongside Blake McCandless, Ricky Springer. We also have Brian Bauer in the director's seat, powered by TopFlightPC.com. For those tuning in, Mitchell DeJong has been taking flight this entire race. He's been 1 to 3/10 of a second quicker than anybody else in the field this entire race. We talked about this just before we came back, Ricky. He's got the pace to lap himself potentially to the top 15.
Absolutely, and that's something that we spoke about over break. I mean, Jake Matheson is just now going into the Moss corners there, and you can see DeJong is already going into that same set of corners there, so about to both be on the Andretti straightaway, and he's just flying right now. That truck has been on rails since the beginning of the race. I mean, he is currently running 1 minute 20.2 second lap times. Next closest truck, Steven Wilson, 8 seconds back. He's running 1 minute 20.5. So these guys have a 2 to 3/10 gap, which on a road course, we talked earlier that the gaps are much bigger, but 2 to 3/10 a lap does add up quite quickly.
Indeed, and let's take a look at that time. You'll see the current lap time compared to the previous this time by, and already able to get by at least one more truck. That's Derek Justice, by the way, a 120.3 that time by the stripe. His fastest is a 117.4. That is 3/10 quicker than anybody else in this entire field tonight. The next fastest driver is the man in second, Steven Wilson. That's been accomplishing his goal of keep it within 10 seconds. Want to ask you this about, though, Blake. Many drivers, remember, had trouble earlier on in this race. The drivers who stuck with it, like Derek Justice, like Doucette, like Mercurio, they have the chance to try and gain some points now on the drivers like Gilliland, Martinez, and Laprade, who had other troubles in this race. Justice is actually up to P24 now.
Well, and you're going to take advantage of it, obviously, if you can. Adam Gilliland decided to bring it to the garage and go behind the wall. He is out of the event. Alec Martinez did the same as well. And even Brian Mercurio, who's on the racetrack right now after some of those issues, it wasn't necessarily some damage sustained on his truck, but obviously whatever mechanical issues they had in terms of his wheel or steering wheel setup, he's figured that out. So even he's trying to get as many points as possible, because you just never know, even if this might be a drop week for one of these guys, how much getting these positions can matter. And each spot is worth more in this race. We've seen 33, 34 car fields for the majority of this season. This split only took 30 cars, 30 drivers. So that means that the split difference, or the point total between each position, is a little bit greater than what we're seeing. There's a larger spread through the field. So each spot is going to mean a little bit more for each of these guys. So even for somebody like Derek Justice, who, whose truck was up in smoke earlier, he's obviously way off the pace now. If he can gain 4, 5, 6 spots, that could be 60 or 70 points at the end of this thing, which, maybe this won't be a drop week, or it'll help if it's just above what his drop week is. So again, you just never know. And of course, any of these drivers on track, they can just money shift, and that's going to be the end of their night. So there's just a lot left to be decided here.
I 100% agree with you on that, especially with groupings such as this you see on screen. That might be some of the make or break moments for the final couple races campaign. Famiola, we've talked about him off and on throughout tonight. 17th in the point standings with drops entering the evening. Gonzalez, his teammate, 19th in the points. Made his top split debut a few weeks ago. Mike Rasmus, who is in a different split tonight, was on the bubble just 20 points ahead. And the drivers behind them have had struggles. Donovan Strauss, we talked about him having issues. Will Norden, he's a few positions behind them at the end of this train, needing to gain spots here, 25 points out. And don't forget about Kevin King and Zach Nichols, who are also within 42 points of that top 20 cut line tonight here, Ricky, that needed good runs, and in the case of King, had bad luck. And for others, just haven't had the pace on the road course.
Yeah, absolutely. And unfortunately for Kevin King, like you said, just not the luck. But Zach Nichols currently running in the 9th position. I mean, his luck has, I guess you could say, gone his way for most of this race here. He still has a clean truck. The bumper's still on it. For now, we still have 11 laps to go here at Canadian Tire, and there's a lot that can happen as he's trying to track down now the 3 truck in front of him of Seth the Merchant. And we're going to see how that battle plays out here, as I believe that past lap by, he was slower than the Merchant, so not quite making the time up on him that he would like, but he'll be there soon enough.
Yeah, nice and consistent right now. The Merchant is in. Like we've talked about him a lot on the short tracks. He's usually one of the most dominant short track drivers on the service. Took home the victory in the first race in the history of FTF Grand National Series action presented by Splash and Go Graphics, and winning that race in the Remembering Bob Bear 250. Dominant in the Canadian in the Cars Esport Tour. Usually don't see him have this type of pace on the road course. He's still putting lap times 4/10 back though of Mitchell DeJong per lap.
Well, and I think that just goes to show you how dominant that DeJong is here on the road courses, that some of the best and most respected sim racers this community has seen, and of course Seth the Merchant is one of those drivers, to still be that far off the pace from somebody is just, I mean, again, Michael Guerrilli is not in the booth with us tonight, but I think he and a lot of the drivers in the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing series are starting to panic a little bit, knowing that DeJong, especially with what we can presume will be a race victory tonight if he's able to keep it on the racetrack for the last couple of laps, he is well on his way to not only qualifying for the Pro Series, but even looking to maybe even win the Pro Series championship. So if he gets in the Coke Series next year, again, I would not be surprised once he gets in an Xfinity car and a Cup car and these things, if he's going to show this same dominating speed. I mean, I think the Coke guys are just lucky he's not going to be on the Daytona road course next Tuesday night.
I'd like to thank Anthony Alfredo for the raid of 24 viewers for tonight's action here on Podium Esports, as we're within the final 10 laps of round 11 at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park for the eNASCAR iRacing Road to Pro Series. But back towards that point, I've seen him personally dominating in a Cup car before, where in his spare time, a couple years ago especially, he'd race some of the early morning NISs. We'd be in the same splits, in fact. He'd usually be a threat to win those races, and by a significant margin depending on some of the racetracks. He's had the pace there. He also has the right team around him. Keegan Leahy's on the box. He's been a part of that big 3 of drivers working on the setups for the VRS cars in the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing series, and has been in the box with Zelensky along with Leahy. And don't forget, he's someone with a lot of real-world experience too. A former X Games gold and silver medalist, a Red Bull athlete. He's been absolutely flying in this championship and has the chance, I think, especially with the momentum being carried here by your overall race leader here, Ricky, to try and potentially make a splash the second he steps on the grid in the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing series, if he can make it to the qualifier.
Absolutely. And when you talk about team chemistry, we talked about how people have kind of switched teams throughout the beginning of this Road to Pro season, and people who have great chemistry are the guys on that VRS team. I mean, those guys work so well together to get these vehicles set up for not only the Road to Pro series, but also the Coca-Cola iRacing series. They have these cars so set up in the right way for their drivers, it's just perfect. The chemistry between those guys is perfect. There's no other words to say that these guys are some of the best people on iRacing that work together, and they just compete at the top level and stay at that level no matter what they do.
By the way, he just lapped his way up to P19 and a chance to lap up to 18th. Danny Falkingham is the next truck up the road for SPG. 8 laps to go this time by. Check that, 7 to go this time by. As you take a look at the back end of the number 27 truck in tonight's action. Things have seemed to calm down, just to say the very least, Blake, as I think at this point, everyone wants to just get the truck in one piece to the checker flag and take the points and focus on Texas.
And certainly the case. As these guys continue to get separated from one another, they know whose truck is faster than the others. I think they're just very content to manage the situation that they have, keep the tires on it. I know as even I've been looking at Mitchell DeJong's stream, which of course if you're interested, obviously there is an onboard shot at twitch.tv/Mitchell DeJong. You can go and watch what I would describe as a man looks like he's sleeping with his eyes open, because he is just cool, calm, collected. Heart rate is, I'm sure, very low for him, and just it's so incredible to watch him smoothly navigate these corners, whereas everybody else, even up here in the top 10, is just sliding everywhere, scooting off the track, and DeJong just looks cool, calm, collected, and just looks like he's out for a Sunday drive right now. So I would implore you to go and watch that, if just for a couple of laps, to just see how smooth and how easy he makes it look, because it's really something to see.
Calm, cool, collected. Those are some of the keys, just to say the very least, when it comes to road course racing. You can hear smooth on the throttle each time around the racetrack. 6 laps to go this time by. A couple of the drivers to keep an eye on here. Garrett Maines, I think we talked about that strategy call, Ricky, if that would work for them, for the number 1 truck in the race tonight, to try and jump some drivers. They've done that. It helped them break away from that DeMerchant group they were in the first half of the race, and now they're solidly in P7 and potentially might have a shot to catch up to Caden Honeycutt, depending on mistakes.
Yeah, and Garrett Maines had a fairly decent run at our other road course here on the Road to Pro schedule. Of course, the Charlotte Roval. Him and Carson Hocevar had some great battling throughout the night in that race. Unfortunately, Carson, with real-life stuff, couldn't be with us tonight in the Road to Pro race. But Garrett Maines, with that strategy call, has definitely been able to jump some spots here. Started in the 11th spot, now up to 7th, and he has absolutely no pressure from behind him and is actually slowly hunting down the 10 truck of Caden Honeycutt. So we're going to have to see if maybe he can up that position a little bit and try and hop inside the top 5 sneakily here as we have 6 laps to go.
Yeah, this is one of the closer battles on the racetrack. Many of the groupings have broken up here. Means it's just been a couple 100s quicker. This grouping has also been very quick. It seems like, though, every time, Blake, that Nichols gets the back bumper of DeMerchant, he starts to wiggle just like that and just loses all the time he gained for several laps.
Yeah, it's very difficult, as you see once again all over the back of him. They slide a little bit once again through that corner, and it's just one of those things. You get up to somebody and it's hard to pass. It's hard to put the throttle down this late in the run with how much the rear tires have heated up. Again, track is at the hottest temperature it's been all afternoon long, and it's very difficult, especially the way that these NASCAR style machines run on these road courses, how much you have to save the rear tires. It makes it very difficult to try and put the throttle down and make a pass late. As we see another battle on screen for 15th, Dylan Jones and Danny Hansen, who, guess what, we mentioned earlier that Hansen got run off the racetrack by Dylan Jones, so he's chasing back down, and we'll have to see how this shakes out in the last couple of laps.
And that watermelon helmet and hat looking to try put a cap on this fight. They also are within range, by the way, of Garrett Conrath, who's had some mistakes, who is also in the top 20 fight. In the point standings entering tonight, here's a look from that Nexus machine. Gap is about 1.7 seconds between 14th and 15th. So at this point, how do you plan this out if you are Danny Hansen, Ricky? Do you just wait for a mistake, or do you try and push the issue?
I think at this point during the race, especially with this little laps to go here, I think you're going to push the issue here, but also if you see that and Dylan are gaining on Garrett in front of you, then just ride behind him. Try and get up to that truck in front of you guys, then make a pass on both of them. It's going to come down to the patience and also the awareness of your surroundings and the way that the other drivers are going. If the guy in front of you is obviously quicker than the guy in front of him, ride behind if you know you're going to gain both spots here. But honestly, with the way that the pass happened last time between these two drivers, I don't see that number 28 truck being very patient.
100% agree potentially on that one. By the way, the gap between P6 and P7 is now under a second. And you know how important this race is at this point, though, for the Elliott Sauer Esports machine. Development driver for Richmond Raceway Esports, a part of that organization, working with Elliott Sauer. Big part of the Virginia racing scene, doing various different media appearances since joining Elliott Sauer Esports back in the late spring. He's someone that struggled a lot, Blake, for consistency and keeping the truck clean in the first half of the season, has cleaned it up in some of the races in the second half of the campaign.
That's certainly true. Garrett Maines, one of those drivers that is developing and maturing before our very eyes, and it may be a little bit too late for the cause right now as he came into tonight with the drop sitting about 300 points back of that cut line, but very good signs for the future here for Garrett Maines as he's been steady in this race, had a good qualifying effort, is one of just two drivers that started outside the top 10 that has worked their way up into the top 10 and kept himself there. Trying to chase down Caden Honeycutt to see if he can get sixth, but certainly for a driver who sports the highest I rating in this field, I think this is a sign of things to come, and obviously what everybody there at Elliott at Sadler Esports wants to see out of this young man.
Team expecting some significant announcements apparently throughout the rest of the week. Keep an eye on that on social media. By the way, shout out to Landon Huffman and his 18 followers for joining on the raid, as their trucks are right now 2, 3, 4, and 5 on the racetrack with 2 laps to go. That includes the Dead Zone Racing trucks with Liebert and Kerner, who joined prior to Las Vegas. They look to lock things up for a majority of the top 5, but the man who has led the way all night long by 9 seconds is about a lap and a half away for the checker flag. Mitchell DeJong with 120.6 as he's been a tenth of a second quicker than the whole field for the drop of the green flag in his Toyota.
Yeah, and Mitchell DeJong, it just comes down to the way he drives that truck. We whole lot in road course racing, especially with stock and the trucks here, is engine braking and then mechanical braking here. Of course, mechanical braking, just when you get up on the brake pedal, you try and slow that truck down as fast as possible. But one thing that Mitchell is so good at doing here, and I noticed this in qualifying for him, is engine braking that car. That's when you shift the truck down just a little bit early and get higher up in the RPMs, and it bogs the truck down. And some people will have what we call wheel hop, and the rear end will start to kind of hop around on you. None of that for him. He will go off into the Moss corners and absolutely do it flawlessly every single time. And just down to the little techniques that he uses to get around this track, it's special.
1 lap to go this time presented by iRacing. Final couple miles for Mitchell DeJong as he looks to try and get another checkered flag in the eNASCAR iRacing Road to Pro Series in 2020. He started off the campaign strong at the Charlotte Roval, came away with some victories at some of the various different ovals. Now is just only a few turns away, Blake, from taking home the checkered.
And again, this is just putting a cap on what's been an outstanding season for DeJong. Obviously, was the victor on the road course at the Roval back at Charlotte. But even aside from that, has been awfully strong throughout this season. Had a great run at Richmond, had another stellar run at Las Vegas just a week ago. He was fast at Homestead, and he's just going to bring it home here and try to cap off what's been a dominating season so far for the driver, looking to make his way into the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series.
Final stretch down the Mario Andretti straightaway. He's been a driver in many different disciplines. In real life, a winner in the X Games, a driver who's raced in Rallycross, a world championship contender in iRacing Rallycross, and now For the third time in 2020, he takes home the checker flag in the eNASCAR iRacing Road to Pro Series. Mitchell DeJong brings VRS back to victory lane once more.
And in a dominating fashion, rather, as he wins the race by almost 10 seconds. Steven Wilson was able to stick with his goal and finish within 10 seconds of DeJong, but absolutely dominating performance tonight and stellar effort from that VRS team as they put that Toyota Tundra in the win and in the winner's circle by a lot tonight.
Total Advantage and Dead Zone Racing trucks finished 2, 3, 4, and 5, but P6 not over. Garrett Maines not electing to give the bump. Takes P7, Caden Honeycutt with the very needed P6 for the points. Seth DeMerchant in composition for P number 8. Zach Nichols behind him in P9. And Casey Tucker, your biggest mover of the race, rounds out the top 10 in what was an eventful race tonight. In total, 17 trucks finished on the lead lap, but one man put on a clinic. Mitchell DeJong with the victory tonight. Blake, it wasn't 20 or 30 seconds like some may have expected tonight, but he showed he was the best driver of the road course all night.
He did, and I think we're just going to have to start taking not only DeJong seriously, but how about Steven Wilson out here finishing about 14, 15 seconds ahead of his teammates, started second and finished there as well. Obviously, it was DeJong that battled it out at Las Vegas. He was top 2 the previous 2 races in the eNASCAR iRacing Road to Pro Series. So how about Steven Wilson, man? We have to give credit to him because he has been is equally dominant. Maybe not so tonight with DeJong on the road course, but definitely Wilson has emerged as a star in this series.
And I think DeJong ran out of fuel, guys. He might have underfueled the car on the pit stop. That is a strategy some teams like to use, and that's why I think Bose is trying to give him a push. Unfortunately, the push is going nearly straight into Steven Wilson before Mitchell can try and celebrate here. Either way, guys, dominating performance, strategy was on par, and the speed was stellar. A++ across the board. More than 9 seconds is the winning margin over Steven Wilson. Alan Bose comes home in P number 3, while Jarrett Liebert comes home in 4th. Eddie Kerner finishes in 4th. Jarrett Liebert, I should rather say, in 4th, with Eddie Kerner in P5. Caden Honeycutt in P6. Garrett Maines in 7th. Seth DeMerchant in P8. Nichols and Tucker round out your top 10, Blake.
And a nice run there for Tucker, rounds out the top 10. Michael Gonzalez will finish up 11th. 12th is Femi Olot. 13th is Will Norton for a trio of Toyotas there from 11th through 13th. Garrett Conrath is 14th. Danny Hansen, after that contact, he eventually finds his way by Dylan Jones to take 15th. 16th goes to Jones. 17th is Anthony Burrows. 18th goes to Jake Matheson. 19th, Daniel Falkingham. And 20th, another car that finished a lap down was Brian Blackford.
21st spot tonight goes to Kevin King. Andrew Freenosh also a lap down. Brandon Bullios also a lap down. Derek Justice recovers to a P24 after crashing shortly after he tried the undercut strategy. Adam Gilliland, a DNF tonight, 23 laps down. Alec Martinez, 25 laps down, also DNF. Ryan Doucette and Brian Mercurio, though, were able to jump Briar LaPrade and Donovan Strauss to gain a couple of extra positions and what were some rough nights for them. Doucette involved in that incident early on in the race. Mercurio with a technical error with his pedals giving out on the opening laps of the race down the Mario Andretti straightaway to round out your 30 entries tonight. But one man tonight put on a show. Mitchell DeJong taking home the victory tonight in the VRS truck by more than 9 seconds. Mitchell, your 3rd win of the campaign. How do you feel winning your 2nd road course and 3rd overall race of the campaign?
Feels amazing, to be honest. You know, I have all the expectations of everyone to perform at this one, but I knew it'd be tough with the new update. It's a lot more grip. It's not the most challenging track with kind of the lack of braking zones, so you know, there's kind of only so much you can do, and I'm just, you know, kind of stoked to be up here once again. You can never know what to expect, and these races are so competitive. As you saw, Steven really kept me on my toes there, and the whole run feels amazing. You know, having that security of getting a lot of points in this one, heading into the final rounds, where we can feel like a little more secure, kind of that we can make the next round. As long as you don't have too bad of runs, it really feels like a weight lifted off my shoulders rather than like, oh, we just won a race, you know. So it's a really cool thing. So yeah, really excited with that one.
One of the things Ricky noticed was that you excelled at was engine braking and being able to keep the truck stable. You were gaining a lot of your time tonight in Moss Corner. What was the preparation like to try and make that truck handle the way it was and to have that skill and confidence in that corner?
Yeah, this was a tricky one. You know, there's a lot of risk for very little reward for lap time here with some of these corners. That's one of them. I honestly feel like I drove that at probably 70-80% of the whole race just because I was so scared of dipping a wheel, and you know, that's the end of the race. So you know, just tried to make it work there. I seemingly picked up some damage actually from a bump right after my pit stop, so we had to actually drive a little bit harder than I kind of wanted to in the second stint, but you know, we had a good tire advantage over Steven, and things kind of worked out there. So you know, everything just kind of worked in our favor again, and no real complaints. So
by the way, you're still, despite that, as you talked about, a 10 to 3/10 quicker a lap, despite having the damage and having to push a bit harder. But the final couple races of the campaign, it's not quite over yet. Tonight puts you in a great position as long as you compete in the rest of the season with drops to lock yourself into the Pro Series in the winter time. But Texas, Martinsville, Phoenix are the last races. Your thoughts on Texas, which is the next race on August 18th?
Unsure. You know, I would say based on the last rounds, I feel like we could have something decent. It feels like the last rounds we kind of got something a bit more figured out at these larger tracks. So you know, hopefully it transfers over. That was, you know, to the prior update. So you know, just have to keep working hard. As long as you know, we have a really good race in the next one. The next two, Martinsville and Phoenix, it would be super helpful not to really worry about finishing too well there, because as everyone knows, it's going to be really crazy. So hopefully we have that buffer there where we can just kind of have some fun and you know, just get some solid finishes. And yeah, we'll see going into Texas.
Who do you want to thank for the victory tonight?
Yeah, of course, big shout out Keegan for you know, keeping me busy and keeping my head kind of in the game through the race and monitoring strategy and all that. All the guys that, you know, helped me test for these, and you know, Danny, Adam, appreciate them for hanging out. And yeah, all our sponsors, going to SimSport, of course, our team, Virtual Racing School, FeedTech, of course, you guys put it on the broadcast, and everyone for watching.
Congratulations on your third victory of 2020 tonight. Strong performance, especially for one of the top road course teams and all of eNASCAR in 2020. That's Mitchell DeJong coming home with the victory tonight by more than 9 seconds. The man who came home in P2 tonight just so happened to be Steven Wilson, who is the second fastest truck of the evening. He's standing by with Blake.
And what's become a regular fixture, being able to talk to not only a couple of Total Advantage trucks at the conclusion of these Road to Pro races, but talking to Steven Wilson in particular. The reigning two-time winner in the Road to Pro Series comes out here to Canadian Tire Motorsports Park and puts up one heck of a fight against one of the best in the business. Steven, a great run for you, put in a solid qualifying effort, and just kept it between the lines, but you obviously came out here with a lot of speed.
Yeah, going into today, I was pretty confident about what we had here. You know, loaded into the session, and it was a bit colder than we were hoping for. Struggled for turn basically the whole race, and even though my rear tires were pretty burned at the end because I had to use the throttle to even try to turn, but it was still tight. But yeah, Mitchell's definitely hard to beat. He's hard to keep up with. I would say being within double-digit seconds, you know, only 9 seconds back. It sounds like a lot, but I'll take it as a win, especially compared to the Roval. It's about 30 seconds less of a difference. So we'll move on to next week where we're a little more comfortable.
I was about to say, you came in here with the points lead. by a large margin, and obviously today is going to help you even more in that regard. You're almost getting into the territory here where you could almost consider yourself locked in to making that top 20 threshold, but obviously you're looking to battle your teammate for the championship. Has any of that kind of played into your mind with Alan and you guys just being so strong? And obviously one of you guys has to win this title.
Yeah, for sure. The championship is what we're looking for right now. I'm pretty sure we're locked in, I would say. But yeah, me and Alan have been having fun with each other for the championship, and I'm being a little confident against him every time I talk to him. But it's just good fun, and yeah, it's fun to battle it out with a teammate for a championship like this, and hopefully us two can bring the momentum onto pro. And yeah, but it's been fun with everybody on Dead Zone and Total Advantage to race with them and be able to battle with them in points.
Well, and that was about to be my next question is, you look into this thing where you're pretty much in territory where as long as you finish, you're pretty much locked into qualifying for the Pro Series. Is there really any kind of head start, do you think, that you could get on preparation for that series? Because obviously very short schedule, you have a lot of great drivers. Obviously we're going to see not only many of your counterparts in here, but another 20 drop down from the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing series. So with this kind of head start that you have, do you think you kind of have an advantage where you can prepare even before a lot of those guys that are going to drop down with you compete in the Pro Series may know that they're going to have to race there in the fall?
Yeah, I don't know about too much of a head start. I would assume we don't know most of the schedule, other than assuming that Daytona is probably going to be the first race, like it is pretty much every year. But yeah, I don't not much of a head start until the schedule comes out, and then we'll start working at it. But yeah, it should be a fun time. Personally, I race, Blake, that I race B-Fix, so I really enjoy those cars. I enjoy them a bit more than the trucks. So I'm just getting myself ready for how I need to drive those cars in particular. And yeah, I think they're probably the most fun cars on the oval side right now to race.
I think I'd have to agree with you there, but okay, here's our weekly tradition. I'll go ahead and throw the mic to you one more time. Give anybody a shout out that needs it. You haven't mentioned the last, 3, 4, 5 weeks or so.
Yeah, well, gotta thank everybody. Total Advantage, Landon Huffman, Nathan Lyon for spotting as every week. I'd like to thank the guys on the World of Outlaws side, Titan Build Construction, for coming on board for the last 5 double XP labs. Yeah, we've been struggling a little more than I'd like to over there, but I'd like to thank those guys for coming on, and I'd like to thank everybody that worked on the setup this week. Cherry Liebert, Graham Bolin, Houston Hammer, all put good work in this week and made us a lot faster, not only as drivers and setup wise, but racing with Graham, who I'd say is one of the better road course drivers in stock cars and all road cars. He can definitely help us gain speed as drivers. And yeah, I'd just like to thank everybody at Dead Zone. Good runs we had. Other than Mitchell, we were the whole top 5. So we'll move on to next week and hopefully continue the momentum.
Well, congratulations to Steven Wilson, who, again, dominating performance, not just tonight, but really throughout this entire Road to Pro season. And with that, we'll throw it to Ricky Springer, who's caught up with, along with Mitchell DeJong, the only drivers out here that did not incur a single incident point in this race. We're going to catch up with Alan Bowes, who brings it home third.
Yeah, Alan Bowes going to bring that Ford truck home in the third position tonight, Alan. Blake just said no incidents out here tonight on a road course. How did you make that happen?
I think most sports, one of the easier tracks to not get incidents on. A lot of the grass is tucked away and you've got plenty of runoff area, but I'm actually kind of shocked I didn't get any incidents. I thought for sure that second lap incident with Caden Honeycutt was going to be a 4X, but I guess it wasn't. Feels pretty good to not get any incidents though. That's kind of shocking.
Yeah, and some really hard racing that you were involved in for most of the race. Kind of take us through what those opening laps were like, battling so hard with those drivers, and then, of course, the pit cycle that bunched you back up.
Yeah, we were kind of struggling with drive off for the first couple laps. Took a couple laps to get the tires up to temp, up to pressure, but After that, I was able to work on getting around Caden again, and then working my way back up to Jarrett, and eventually getting back around him. We just partnered up with him a couple of races ago, so he didn't really give me too much of a hard time to get around him. So I appreciate that. You know, I didn't have anything for Steven and Mitchell. Those guys are beasts, especially on road courses. So I finished right about where I thought I'd finish tonight.
Yeah, so I guess an expected finish for you tonight, but finishing in third has to bring some kind of momentum or excitement to Texas next week. What do you bring into the track next week? You think you have a shot for the victory?
Well, I certainly hope so. Back when the Cup car and the Xfinity car went there earlier this year, I was definitely in love with the track. It's probably one of my favorite tracks in the game. I know a lot of people don't really like it, but it's unique. Turns 1 and 2 is very unique to the circuit, so I'm hoping maybe I can take that love for the track and do a little bit of something with it, but you never know. Like I said, Mitchell and Steven are a beast everywhere, so you can't ever count those guys out.
Yeah, for sure, can't count those drivers out, but obviously, Mr. Bose, we can't count you out either. But on that note, is there anybody you'd like to kind of shout out tonight, thank for a great finish here on the road course?
Yeah, once again, Total Advantage Motorsports, Landon Huffman, thanks for the support, appreciate it a lot. Graham Bolin, Coke Series driver, he put in a lot of work for us this week and found us a lot of speed, so got to thank him for that. Jarrett Liebert, Houston Hamer, Colin Keister, all those guys, Dustin Lingert, they put in a lot of work this week, even though I wasn't able to. They gave me the rundown, they told me what I had to do, and thankfully I was able to execute that.
And for sure, Alan, thank you for talking with us tonight. Alan Bose brings that Ford F-150 home in the third spot on the podium tonight. JP, I'll hand it off to you.
Thank you very much. And first things first, want to ask your opinion on your final thoughts of this race tonight, Blake, as it was a race that had dominance by the man at the front in Mitchell DeJean, but team dominance as well by Total Advantage in the Dead Zone Racing trucks, finishing 2 through 5 on the grid, but several drivers who had much needed performances to get themselves in decent points position for the final 3 rounds.
Well, and Justin, that's what's going to set us up for a really thrilling last 3 weeks of action here. Again, we go to Texas where, again, we mentioned track position and how aggressive you have to be everywhere around that racetrack with the new configuration, and especially in these trucks. It's going to be cutthroat there, and it doesn't get any easier at Martinsville or at Phoenix. So with a lot of the guys in the top 20 that had their issues, a couple other guys looking to crawl their way back into this fight, these last 3 weeks are going to be something to see, not only for the championship between Wilson, Bose, and a handful of TA guys, but obviously that bubble around the 20th spot is something we're going to have to watch very closely these next couple of weeks. So looking forward to that, and who knows, maybe I'll make my way out here for one of these last 3 races. Who knows? We could use N-Race Reporter, couldn't we?
Yes, we could. Just make sure you don't get into trouble early on, especially if we go to a short track for that. But Ricky, we've heard already Blake's thoughts on Texas. What are your quick thoughts on what we should expect in your opinion?
I think it's going to be a very close race. Of course, we heard Alan Bose just a second ago in the interview tell us how different the track is after the rescan and after they redid pretty much the whole entire track there. Turns 1 and 2 completely different. So we're going to see a whole lot of action going around that track, is just how different it is. And we'll see just how these drivers and teams can set up those trucks to be different at Texas, as well. The data from last year, it's no good anymore.
Absolutely, especially with the different banking. It's going to be a challenging one, to say the very least. But we'd like to thank you for tuning in for tonight's exciting action in the eNASCAR iRacing Road to Pro Series. It was a race filled with comers and goers, but one man dominated them all. Team VRS's Mitchell DeJean taking home his 3rd victory of the campaign. I'd like to thank my broadcast partners for tonight, Blake McCandless, Ricky Springer, along with our director for tonight, Ryan Bauer, for joining us and being a part of tonight's coverage, as well as Zach Johnson for his camera's work throughout this evening. Be sure to stick around for the raid as we get ready to follow along with many different more drivers as they try and challenge the various different tracks across the iRacing service. But for James Pike, For Cisco Scaramuza, for Gary Sexton and John Theodore at Podium Esports, for our producer Ryan Bauer, and once again for my partners Blake McCandless and Ricky Sprinter, along with Anthony Alfredo, who stepped in and joined us in the broadcast earlier tonight. I'm Justin Prince. Thank you so much for watching tonight's broadcast, and let's follow on with the raid with Garrett Smithley to see how he's doing in his racing action.